To Reading the Bible with Pastor. Today we're on Esther chapter 6. Previously, we had read about Haman in his anger against the Jews, writing an edict that they would be killed in the 12th month. We're still in the first month, Nisan, and that's the time of Passover, and Mordecai and Esther are trying to figure out a way to save their people. And the Lord will act through them to save the Jewish people here in the King Ahasuerus' kingdom. She goes before King Ahasuerus without permission, but receives his favor, and he asks, "What do you want?" She says, "I would like to throw a feast for you and Haman." And so they do. She's going to throw another feast for them, but in the in-between time, we read chapter 6, where the king is trying to sleep, but he can't. So he asks for a historical book read to him so that he might clear his mind and finally fall asleep. Verse 1. On that night, the king could not sleep, and he gave orders to bring the book of memorable deeds, the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. And it was found, written how Mordecai had told about Bigthana and Teresh to the king's eunuchs, who guarded the threshold, and who had sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. So this story is found in the end of chapter 2, how Mordecai heard this and had Esther tell the king. Verse 3, and the king said, "What honor or distinction has been bestowed on Mordecai for this?" Basically, how have we celebrated the guy who saved my life? The king's young men who attended him said, "Nothing has been done for him." And the king said, "Who is in the court?" Basically, he's asking for his advisors. Tell me how we can solve this problem that we've never celebrated a man who saved the king's life. Now Haman had just entered the outer court of the king's palace to speak to the king about having Mordecai hanged on the gallows that he had prepared for him. Remember, Haman is absolutely furious with Mordecai because he won't pay respect to Haman. So he is going to put him up on a spike, a wooden spike, in his household. Verse 5. And the king's young men told him, Haman is there standing in the court. Basically, he's there ready to ask the king, "Can I hang Mordecai?" And the king said, "Let him come in." So Haman came in, and the king said to him, "What should be done to the man whom the king delights to honor?" You ever been in one of those moments where you think somebody's talking about you or is trying to give you credit, and it actually isn't you, it's somebody else, and you feel really embarrassed? Well, this is about to happen to Haman. He is thinking that the king is actually delighting in him, and so he's there to receive the king's honor. Well, let's see what Haman has to say. And Haman said to himself, "Whom would the king delight to honor more than me?" And Haman said to the king, "For the man whom the king delights to honor, let robes be brought, which the king has worn, and the horse that the king has ridden, on whose head a royal crown is set. And let the robes and the horse be handed over to one of the king's most noble officials. Let them dress the man whom the king delights to honor, and let them lead him on the horse through the square of the city, proclaiming before him, 'Thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor.'" Basically, Haman is thinking, hey, I'm going to wear the king's robes. I'm going to be on the king's horse. I will basically be king before the people's eyes. Verse 10. Then the king said to Haman, "Hurry, take the robes and the horse, as you have said, and do so to Mordecai the Jew, who sits at the king's gate. Leave nothing out that you have mentioned." So the man that Haman hates is going to receive this honor that Haman thought was for himself. This is a reversal, an irony, and we're going to see how things change as we move forward through the book of Esther. Let's continue here with verse 11. So Haman took the robes and the horse, and he dressed Mordecai, and led him through the square of the city, proclaiming before him, "Thus it shall be done to the man whom the king delights to honor." Then Mordecai returned to the king's gate, but Haman hurried to his house, mourning, and with his head covered. And Haman told his wife Zeresh and all his friends everything that had happened to him. Then his wise men and his wife Zeresh said to him, "If Mordecai, before whom you have begun to fall, is of the Jewish people, you will not overcome him, but will surely fall before him." They're almost prophesying as what's going to happen later through the story in Esther. We'll pick up next time here with Esther's feast at the end here of chapter 6 and the beginning of chapter 7.